Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 8th Annual Wild Wisconsin Winter Web Conference. I'm Leah Langby with the IFLS Library System, and I'm moderating the library management track today. Assisting me is Ann Hamland with the Wisconsin Valley Library System. We're really glad to have you here this morning. Our presenter for this session is Dr. Tammy Mays with the Milwaukee Public Library, and she'll be discussing best practices for putting emotional intelligence to work for you as a manager. Tammy, whenever you're ready, please begin.
Well, thank you, Leah. Good morning, all. Before we begin, I believe it'd be really helpful if you have paper and pen in front of you during my presentation. I would like this session to be as interactive as possible. So throughout this morning, I've included a few writing prompts that I hope you will engage in either on paper or feel free to write your answers in the chat box. Again, right now I'm in a room all by myself, so it feels a little awkward. I'm so used to having students in front of me. But again, feel free to write your answers or comments in that chat box. So there are some people who just seem to be particularly good at getting along with others and understanding their feelings. When we talk about these folks, we say things such as, she's really great with people, or it's almost like he can read my mind. Other people seem to be especially good at knowing what they want and going after it. When we talk about these people, we say things such as, she really knows what's on her mind, or once he has his mind set on something, nothing is going to stop him. So these are the kinds of people who are high in intelligence, in emotional intelligence. Their ability to understand and use emotional information helps us to do well at home, school, and at work. And their ability to express themselves and influence others makes them natural leaders as well. Now, for me personally, I was not taught about emotional awareness and understanding in school. I entered the workforce just like you. I knew how to read, write, but lacked the skills to manage my emotions in the heat of challenging problems that I face. But good news, today is a new day. Emotional intelligence can be learned. That means you can improve your emotional intelligence with just a little practice. Why bother, you ask? Emotional intelligence can come in handy in all sorts of situations. For example, it can help you control your temper when you're angry. It can give you motivations to go after your goals. And it can help you cope with difficult people. So your emotional intelligence has an impact on your professional success. Your emotional intelligence is the foundation for a host of critical skills. It impacts most everything you say and do every day. So let's get started. The objectives of today's presentation is to get a basic overview of what emotional intelligence is and how you can manage it in your life, but more importantly, how you can increase your emotional intelligence to begin to utilize all of your intelligence, your education, your experience that you've been storing up for years. I will also discuss how Milwaukee Public Library is putting emotional intelligence into practice with our programs. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Remember, I said it's important that you can utilize all your intelligence, your education, experience that you've been storing up for years. Well, I've been storing up education for years. I'm a graduate of Fisk University, graduated with a biology degree. From there, I decided to go to library school. All of my sisters were educators, but I decided to take a different path to being an educator and went straight to library school, where I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I was in the workforce for a number of years, actually worked a whole 10 years as a health sciences librarian before deciding to go back to school for my PhD. So lucky for me, the Spectrum scholarships were available So anyone who was interested in a PhD can get it for free. But while I was a librarian, I participated in 3 leadership programs that were really pivotal points early in my career. That included the National Library of Medicine Associate Fellowship. That's based out in Bethesda, Maryland, where I spent a whole year moving from department to department, learning all the background information of how each department worked and how to be a health sciences librarian. From there, I did it was about a 2-week program at the Minnesota Training Institute. And then later in life, I participated in the Association of Research Libraries Leadership and Career Development Program. Again, pivotal points early in my career. And if there are any library school students listening to my voice, take heed. If you see a program that pertains to leadership, that pertains to mentoringship, take full advantage of it. And it's okay if you're already a practicing librarian. Take advantage of these programs because you just never know where it's going to lead you. Currently, right now, I'm the branch manager at Milwaukee Public Library, Center Street Branch. And more recently, I participated in the Wisconsin Library Association Leadership Development Institute. And I'll talk a little bit more about that institute later in my presentation. If you're curious, and you may be, my dissertation topic was called A Mixed Methods Approach to Understanding the Role of Athletic and Racial Identities on the Health Information Seeking Behaviors of African American Male Athletes. You're probably wondering, why am I talking about emotional intelligence? Well, it's always been an interest of mine. And I realized if you want success in the workplace, learn the tenets of emotional intelligence. So let's start with a little bit of background about emotional intelligence. 2 American psychologists named Peter Salovey and John Mayer first coined the term emotional intelligence in 1990. At first, emotional intelligence was a little known idea. But then another researcher came along. In 1995, a psychologist, Daniel Goleman. He researched the importance of emotional intelligence and workplace success. Goleman published a best-selling book called Emotional Intelligence. And in response to Goleman's best-selling book, Time magazine ran a cover story about emotional intelligence. Suddenly, emotional intelligence became a household word. And believe it or not, the definition of emotional intelligence varies. To make the concept of emotional intelligence more understandable and practical for this presentation, because I only have 45 minutes, I simplified the definition. Emotional intelligence is a group of 5 traits or skills or competencies that when used together effectively can help you achieve your desired goal. Emotional intelligence is the process of reflecting on the connection between your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and using that information to manage yourself and others in the direction of your goal. So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and understand your emotion and yourself and others, and your ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and relationships. So emotional intelligence affects how we manage behaviors, navigate those super difficult social situations, and make personal decisions that achieve positive results. And emotional intelligence can be developed to improve ourselves. This will help you be aware of and understand your emotions and the emotions of others, as well as how those emotions affect you and those around you. So emotional intelligence taps into how well you understand your own and others' feelings, how you cope with stress, how you communicate with others, how you control your impulses, and handle those challenging social situations. I found that emotional intelligence is foundational for developing and maintaining successful work relationships. Why? Well, because so much of our work as librarians, we help patrons who go through trauma or some type of hardship. And this type of service, believe it or not, affects our emotional well-being because we're right there with them. If a patron comes in who's suddenly homeless, we're right there with them trying to find them housing for the night. By developing your emotional intelligence skills will improve your resilience because you can understand the emotional dynamics of others and process your own feelings in the face of adversary. So remember, I said there were 5 traits, 5 skills, 5 competencies. I use those words interchangeably, but there are 5 skills that go under emotional intelligence that Daniel Goleman wrote about. So emotional intelligence refers to the ability to identify and manage one's own emotions, as well as understanding of the emotions of others. So let me briefly go through these 5, but then in the next slides, I will actually take my time and go through each one. So self-awareness, knowing what you are feeling and why you're feeling it, and how it's affecting your performance. Self-awareness is knowing your strengths and weaknesses. It's knowing how people see you. Self-regulation, the ability to control impulses and moods. It's managing your emotions. It allows you to focus on what you're doing. If you can focus more on the task at hand, having a drive to achieve, setting goals and working towards those goals. It keeps those disruptive emotions and impulses in check. Motivation is the passion to pursue goals with energy, striving to improve or meet a standard of excellence. It's the persistence in pursuing goals despite obstacles and setbacks. It's the readiness to act on opportunities. Empathy, being able to read other people, knowing what they feel without them telling you. People tell us how they feel in their body language, so you can pick that up. It is really important in any relationship, whether we're talking that relationship is professional or personal. Social skills. It's proficiency in managing your relationship, being able to manage conflict, listening openly and sending convincing messages, initiating or managing change. So together, all 5 skills define our ability to recognize and understand emotions, as well as our ability to use this awareness to manage our behavior and our relationships. So the aim is to enhance our ability to be more emotionally intelligent, to have better awareness, and to handle day-to-day situations more effectively. So do you remember I told you earlier I do have my PhD, but it's in information science. It's not in psychology. So I'm going to give you the bare, simple understanding of how emotional intelligence and the brain all works out. So the physical pathway for emotional intelligence starts in the brain at the spinal cord. Your primary senses enter here and must travel to the front of your brain before you can think rationally about your experience. But first, they must travel through the limbic system, the place where emotions are experienced. Emotional intelligence requires effective communication between the rational and emotional centers of your brain. You are able to use your thoughts to take back control from your emotions. Since our brains are wired to make us emotional creatures, your first reaction to an event is always going to be an emotional one. It's just how it is. You have no control over this part of the process, but you do control the thoughts that follow an emotion. And you have a great deal of say in how you react to an emotion, as long as you're aware of it. Some experience produce emotions that you are easily aware of, and other times emotions may seem non-existent. When something generates a prolonged emotional reaction in you, it's called a trigger event. And your reaction to your triggers is shaped by your personal history, which includes your experience with similar situations. As your emotional intelligence skills grow, you will learn to spot your triggers and practice productive ways of responding that will become a habit. There is no known connection between intelligence quotient. I get that a lot. People ask, well, aren't they the same? IQ, EQ, emotional intelligence? No, there's no connection between the two. Test. Your IQ is not flexible. When it's possible to when it is possible to improve one IQ to some degree through discipline and study, generally your IQ, your intelligence, is fixed from birth. But on the other hand, emotional intelligence is flexible, and that can be learned. A high emotional intelligence can be developed even if you aren't born with it. So when you're in school, your intelligence quotient is valued and is really important. But when you're in a workplace, you will soon notice that your colleagues are just as smart, which is why emotional intelligence is highly valued. It allows you to stand out from the crowd. How you handle your own emotions, how you manage yourself, being able to get along with people, staying focused on your goals, and how to manage people. So let's take our time and go through each of those 5 skills, starting with self-awareness. Self-awareness is like an ongoing inner conversation. It's the ability to know yourself and the ability to recognize how others see you both play a vital role in being an effective leader. Self-awareness is your ability to accurately perceive your own emotions in the moment and understand why you react the way you do. Self-awareness includes staying on top of your typical reactions to certain events, certain challenges, and certain people. An understanding of why you react the way you do is important and will help you quickly make sense of your emotions. Once you become more self-aware, you become more willing to tolerate the discomfort of focusing on feelings that may be negative. The only way to truly understand your emotion is to spend enough time thinking through them to figure out where they come from and why they are there. Emotions always serve a purpose. Many times emotions seems to arise out of thin air, and it's important to understand why something gets a reaction out of you. As we develop emotional self-awareness, we understand why certain feelings occur under various circumstances. The trait of emotional self-awareness is defined as reading one's own emotion and recognizing their impact. Developing your emotional self-awareness will help you understand a fuller set of reasons you became a librarian, why you act in a manner that you do, and why you react to people in a certain way. You can learn how to manage your ego, grow past your tendencies towards perfectionism, being more resilient, and recognize unhealthy behaviors. As we become more emotionally self-aware, we also become more cognizant of the times when we act emotionally and overreact to certain situations. Emotional self-awareness can help us learn our strengths and weaknesses and how to use this knowledge to increase and improve our leadership efforts. Self-awareness is your ability to accurately pick up your emotions in other people and understand what is really going on with them. This means perceiving what other people are thinking and feeling, even if you do not feel the same way. It's easy to get caught up in your own emotions and forget to consider the perspective of the other person. But guess what? Self-awareness ensures you stay focused and absorb critical information. Listening and observing are the most important elements of self-awareness. To be self-aware, you have to spot and understand people's emotion while you are right there in the middle of it, a contributing member of the interaction. So remember earlier I said I like interaction with the audience? Here's where you get your pen and paper out, or feel free to jot in some of your comments in the message box. So I put up a couple of writing prompts. This is a great way for two of the writing prompts for you to go to your colleagues, your coworkers, and ask them this question. Describe 2 things about me that you most appreciate having in a manager. Or if you're not a manager, describe 2 things about me that you most appreciate having in a colleague. Give me 2 examples of times when my emotional reaction to something made me difficult to deal with. And what is the most important thing could you do to become a better leader? Now, to grow your self-awareness and create positive changes in your life, you need to seek feedback. And I know that's challenging for some of you. I know. But to improve your self-awareness is to open yourself up to receive feedback from your friends, your coworkers, your colleagues, your mentors, your supervisors, and even your family members. I believe other people's point of view can be a real eye-opener by showing you how other people experience you. Now you get a chance to see and understand your emotions and how your reactions affect other people. I'm just going to move on because they don't like silence. So let me move on to the next screen. Self-awareness and self-regulations are closely connected. Self-regulation can be defined as the ability to manage powerful and disruptive feelings and to prevent those emotions from damaging our personal and professional lives. If self-awareness provides us the ability to read our own emotions effectively and to recognize the impact, then self-regulation gives us the ability to manage our words and actions during an emotional situation. One way to develop your self-regulation is to learn to recognize your triggers. I know I said that earlier, but I got to repeat myself. A trigger occurs when a certain circumstances activate strong emotions within us. Triggers are based upon previous painful experiences, and so we often react defensively when we are consciously or unconsciously reminded of a particular situation. No one makes you act a certain way. You are responsible for your responses to your feelings. Self-regulation is what happens when you act or you do not act. Self-regulation is your ability to use your awareness of your emotions to stay flexible and direct your behavior positively. This means managing your emotional reactions to situations and people. Self-regulation is revealed by your ability to tolerate the uncertainty as you explore your emotions and options. Self-regulation is more than resisting explosive or problematic behavior. Your commitment to self-regulation will be tested over and over again. And I get that all the time, every day at work. Those who manage themselves the best are able to see things through without cracking. Success comes to those who can put their needs on hold and continually manage their tendencies. So let's talk a little bit about some strategies for developing those self-regulations. So those are the writing prompts. Identify 2 examples of recent events at work that just left you angry or frustrated. Who else was involved in this situation? And what are you feeling about them? And what could you do in the future to avoid the same outcome in similar situations? So feel free to write on a piece of paper or in a chat box. But guess what? There are strategies that you can incorporate into your daily routine that will help you manage your emotions. I'm only going to talk about 2 strategies, or maybe even 3, but there are so many more strategies. I just don't have the time. When you find yourself unable to manage your emotions, take deep breaths. When you find yourself stressed because of an upcoming deadline, or you're upset because a patron yelled at you for no reason, take slow, deep breaths. Inhale through your nose and out through your mouth to calm yourself down. Take control of your self-talk. Well, what do I mean by that? It's simple. Replace those negative words, those negative thoughts with positive ones. Stop telling yourself, I can't do this. Oh, I don't have enough experience to apply for that job. Change those negative words. Replace them with something positive. And lastly, smile and laugh more often. Believe it or not, when you lift your mood, when you need to lift your mood, go in your office, put your headsets on, and watch cat videos. Do something that makes you laugh, makes you smile, just to take the anger or the frustration away. And I'm curious, before I move on to the next slide, what are your strategies you use to improve your mood? Do cat videos do it for you? Do baby videos do it for you? I'm just curious.
Feel free to
So
type those in, folks. Oh, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Motivation. Motivation refers to the drive to pursue a goal. The one trait that virtually all effective leaders have is motivation. These leaders are driven to achieve beyond expectations, their own expectations and anyone else's. Those with high motivation have a passion to pursue goals with energy. Both motivation and emotion are forces that propel you into action. One of the best motivation boosters is optimism. And I know you know someone who's so optimistic when they walk in each morning, super perky. Get to know that person. But people with high motivation remain optimistic even when it looks as if they're about to fail. So, you know what comes next. Strategies for developing your own personal motivations. And a few more writing prompts. So think of a time when someone gave you feedback that did not fit your self-perception and describe what that person told you. Actually, you don't have to put that in the chat box. That may be too personal. But if you want to put that on pen and paper, great. How did that help you make changes so that your behavior will come into closer alignment with your intentions? I'll be the first to admit, receiving feedback is challenging. It took me a long time to finish my PhD. And that feedback that I received on those papers each time, oh, it wore me out. So receiving feedback is challenging, especially when you disagree with it. But to help you receive feedback well, consider the source of your feedback. Who's giving it to you? Does this person know you? Have they seen your performance? Do they have an interest in seeing you improve? So once you process the feedback, start making adjustments to show that person who gave you the feedback that you truly value his or her comments. Take that feedback seriously and try to do what he or she suggested. And believe it or not, that's a great way to build relationships. So here's another writing prompt for you. I know I'm giving you a lot, but I love interaction. I want to hear from you in the message box. How did you handle those constructive feedback? I'm just curious. But we're going to move on because they don't like silence. So, empathy. Empathy is just understanding how others feel and being compassionate towards them. As librarians, we need empathy to understand those we serve and to comprehend why they act as they do. It is easier to keep from losing our temper or from holding a grudge if we learn to understand their point of view. Have you ever had experience of listening to someone who's in pain or who's angry and frustrated? And at any of those times, have you found yourself feeling that person's pain, anger, or frustration? Did that allow you to respond more compassionately and without judgment, just simply accepting the person's experience as real? If so, you have known empathy. You have walked in someone else's experience and connected with that person. So empathy is the skill that allows us to connect with people on an emotional level. The trait of empathy is best understood in three parts: knowing another person's feelings, feeling what that person feels, and responding compassionately to another person's distress. Now, try not to get empathy and sympathy confused. Two different things. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel sorry for someone or show pity for them, which strips them from their human dignity. We don't want that. In contrast, empathy requires that we respect a person enough to listen and to do our best to comprehend their perspective. When we understand how our emotional reaction affects others, we are better able to better able to connect with them. Then we can understand their struggles and adopt the trait, the skill of empathy. We can gain empathy for others by learning to listen deeply to them and their concerns so they can feel that they have been heard. But I have to be real with you guys. Empathy is a challenge. But empathy is the heart of being a caring leader. It allows people you manage to do their best. So we got a system going on. Let's talk a little bit about strategies for developing your own empathy. Some more writing prompts. I want you to ask for feedback. You can talk to your coworker, you can talk to your mentors. When we have conversations, ask them, when we have conversations, do I convey that I'm authentically interested in what you have to say? Do I convey that I want to understand what meanings the topic has for you and how you feel about it? And what are 3 things you would like to see me do that will help me develop my ability to connect more deeply with other people? So, to build your empathy, you can practice the art of active listening. Believe it or not, that's challenging. Active listening. But let me continue. Most people think they're good listeners until they play. Do you guys remember the telephone game? And it starts at the end of the room. They whisper the messages from ear to ear to ear. But by the time that message gets to you, it's all garbled. So how accurate would that final message be? So listening requires focus, and focus isn't easy when your attention is being distracted in so many directions. As a manager of a branch, my focus is distracted every day. So sometimes it's a little difficult when one of my staff members come to me with a situation because I'm trying to listen to that person, but yet there's some chaos going over in the corner that I have to address. So here is the strategy to practice. When someone is talking to you, try and stop everything and listen fully until that person is finished speaking. When you're on the phone, try not to multitask. Librarians, aren't we great at multitasking? But if we're practicing active listening, don't multitask by sending emails. I want you to really focus on the conversation. And you're able to be present in the moment, and you're able to pick up the cues the other person sends and really hear what he or she is saying to you. So I want to hear from you in the message box. How do you build up your empathy? What are some of your challenges? I think I have time to share a personal story. I think I do. So the empathy for me has been challenging as a first-time manager. And I want to be as transparent with you as possible. The first time I had to tell a patron that they had bed bugs, I was terrified. But I decided I could do this. I printed off a handout. In my best professional voice, I pulled the patron aside, I gave him the handout, and I explained that they had bed bugs. The materials they bought back had bed bugs. Well, this woman, well, I thought I was professional. And I was. I was so professional, I was too clinical. And the woman told me that I was not empathetic for her situation. And I was heartbroken because, again, I didn't want to be too emotional. I was trying to stay professional. So that feedback had me going back and talking to myself to realize, well, maybe I ought not to be so clinical. Maybe having a softer voice will help the situation. I'm still working on empathy. That's the only reason why I'm sharing this story. I want to be as transparent as possible. So again, how do you build up your empathy? Give me some of your strategies. Let's move on. Social skills. So emotions are contagious in subtle or not so subtle ways. We all make each other feel a bit better or a lot worse. As part of any contact we have, every encounter can be weighted along a scale with emotional, toxic to nourishing. So social skills is handling another person's emotion artfully. Working on a relationship takes time, it takes effort and know-how. Social skills allow you to deal with difficult times straightforwardly. Being able to keep your cool. It will help you foster open communication and stay receptive to bad news as well as good. So developing your social skills will help you handle difficult people with tense situations with diplomacy and tact, as well as spot potential conflict. Social skills will bring disagreements into the open and help de-escalate. And that's the key word, de-escalating the situation. So let's look at some of the strategies for social skills. I'm being transparent, you guys. So as a first-time manager, developing this skill has truly been a challenge for me. But I am learning strategies that help me tackle tough conversations with both my staff and my patrons. As I shared earlier, that bed bill conversation didn't quite go well the first time. But it happens to other patrons, and I'm getting a little bit better at delivering the news. So I want to hear from you in the message box. What's your strategy to tackling those challenging conversations? Okay. So moving forward, the takeaway activities for incorporating those 5 skills. What would you do today? What will you begin to do after today to increase your emotional intelligence? I really want you to come up with your own emotional intelligence action plan. And your plan can be as simple as picking an emotional intelligence skill to work on. For example, I personally will work on self-regulation because I want the ability to manage my own emotions more effectively. Definitely practicing more mindfulness activities and definitely giving myself more positive self-talk. I want also in your action plan, I just want you to practice, practice, practice. Take every situation as a practice opportunity. And be patient with yourself. And that includes me. Being patient with myself and giving myself kudos for making even the smallest improvements. What is important to realize is that I'm making progress. As I move on to my next slide, feel free to share in the message box what you plan to start today to increase your emotional intelligence, because I do want to hear. So, emotional intelligence in practice. So, mentoring played a significant role in my personal and professional life. I participated in quite a few mentoring programs. So, when I started at Milwaukee Public Library, I was ecstatic to find out that I was assigned a mentor. And this person was a fellow branch manager. So she had her own branch. She had been a branch manager for years, and she had been a public librarian for years. So my mentor's coaching was invaluable during my first year as a manager. She played an integral part in my smooth transition from being a health sciences librarian to going into public librarianship. My mentor met with me regularly. We had face-to-face meetings. When something went down in my library, I picked up the phone and called her. She listened attentively, and helped me problem solve when needed, because that's what a good mentor does. And more importantly, through our relationship, she helped me build my confidence that yes, I can manage this branch. I'm a pretty good manager. So the Milwaukee Public Library also offers something called a career path observation program, which allows our staff an opportunity to observe employees in other public library positions. So through this program, staff can gain a broader perspective and a greater understanding of the library system as a whole and how other work sites operate. And lastly, the Milwaukee Public Library has a mentor program that gives staff members who are interested in career advancement an opportunity to interact on a one-on-one basis with another employee for advice and guidance on how to prepare for a promotion. These employees who are participating can gain a broad perspective on a particular career through interactions with another employee who already functions in that capacity. So some of those examples include, but not limited to, librarianship, paraprofessional library careers, marketing, accounting, human resources, building management, engineering, computer network management, and so on. So I'm really proud of the mentoring opportunities that Milwaukee Public Library is putting in full effect. Definitely putting emotional intelligence into practice. I'm curious, what is your organization doing to put emotional intelligence into practice? My next slide. I'll be amiss not to mention the Wisconsin Library Association, since I just participated in their Leadership Development Institute. They too are taking their mission, their vision statements, and putting emotional intelligence into practice. So I participated in the Leadership Development Institute this past August in Madison, Wisconsin. At the Institute, we focused on 5 core leadership competencies: emotional intelligence, collaboration, relationship building, change management, and critical decision making. And the program also provides a valuable opportunity to assess your own leadership strengths and weaknesses in a very supportive and engaging learning environment. What's really nice, the icing on the cake, librarians from all over Wisconsin in various levels of their career participate in the Institute. Another opportunity to network, to get to know your fellow librarians. So the Wisconsin Library Association is putting emotional intelligence into practice, not only with the Leadership Development Institute, but also with the newly developed statewide year-long mentorship program. I want to tell everyone the deadline for that is March 2nd. And according to the Wisconsin Library Association website, mentees gain experience from knowledgeable library colleagues while becoming further involved in the statewide professional association. So mentors can gain opportunities to give back to the profession, model volunteerism, and help influence the future of librarianship. So let's continue talking about what Milwaukee Public Library is doing of putting emotional intelligence into practice. So for those who are trained, Milwaukee Public Library is putting emotional intelligence into practice by working intentionally to learn about alternative practices to help manage and build relationships in the community. So last fall, MPL partnered with a school by the name of Alliance High School, and we are working collaboratively with a senior level team facilitator to plan the circle experience for the community. So we're working with a trainer to learn more about restorative practices and circle keeping, which is a way to be less punitive. It's a less punitive approach to resolving issues with those challenging patrons. So for those of you who are not familiar with the term circle keeping, let me explain it quickly. It's simply a dialogue process that works intentionally to create a safe space to discuss issues. It can be used to repair harm or to overcome less difficult challenges. The intent of the circle is to find resolutions that serve every member of the circle, with everyone having an equal voice. So in October, this past October, my branch, Center Street, conducted our very first ever staff circle. I have to say I was truly amazed by the process. In December, we held our very first library hosted community circle right at Center Street. The Milwaukee Public Library, we partnered with Alliance High School. We worked with the team facilitator to plan this circle for our youth. And even more exciting news, we have an all staff Circle Keeper series scheduled for later this month. So, Milwaukee Public Library has a new initiative getting underway that supports our mission of helping people read, learn, and connect, and our vision as an anchor institution that helps build healthy families and vibrant neighborhoods, the foundation of a strong Milwaukee. So I have to stop and applaud Paula Kiley, my library director, and her entire administration team on developing an all-encompassing service philosophy that will further strengthen the organization and build relationships with external and internal customers. So with our new service philosophy, Milwaukee Public Library will build relationships with our customers, our colleagues, our partners, which is the foundation for emotional intelligence, developing and maintaining successful relationships. So our service philosophy is putting emotional intelligence into practice by setting the bar on patron service with a can-do attitude, care, and kindness. Milwaukee Public Library is resetting the bar on organizational expectations. And the organizational expectation is to share a goal of getting to yes. This means providing service that would create a welcoming and supportive work environment for all members of the library team. So, with that said, I have to shout out to my staff at Center Street Branch. Here's a picture of everybody. And I also have to give a huge thank you to Leah and Ann, my facilitators of this webinar, as well as Dan here at the Milwaukee Public Library downtown branch, who is my tech guy. He's hanging around just in case I need any type of assistance. I just want to say thank you, and thank you again.
Wonderful, thank you. We did have a few questions come in, so if you're willing to answer. One was when you were talking about asking for feedback. Do you recommend doing that in a conversation or doing it in more of a way that allows people to give you anonymous feedback, or what do you think is the best way to do that?
Well, that's a great question. And I think it depends on your relationship with that person. If it's a formal or informal mentor, just a one-on-one in the office, over the phone, I think it's all dependent on your relationship with that person. If it's a supervisor, definitely in the office with the door closed. Schedule yourself on their calendar. Let them know the purpose of the meeting prior to, so they can be prepared and not necessarily blindsided. They can give you all the feedback that you needed. I hope I'm answering that question to the fullest. It's just dependent on the relationship that you have with that person. Now, if this is a good girlfriend or friend, well, you can go out for drinks and have that feedback. It's all dependent on the relationship that you have with that person.
Excellent, that's very helpful. We also had a couple questions about how you're implementing things at Milwaukee Public. So interested in a little more information about how people access the mentoring program that you have at the library, and how the logistics of that work.
So from my understanding, they contact their immediate supervisor, letting them know of their interests. And then from there, contacting with the supervisors, okay, making sure the schedule allows for everything, contacting the human resources department at our downtown branch. And that's just getting the wheels in motion. And once they figure out which department they want to observe or which person they want to mentor with, it's just a matter of looking at the schedules to figure out how we can get that one person there to that particular branch.
Okay.
So again, it just starts with a conversation with your immediate supervisor.
Great. And then just a little bit more about implementing the circle keepers. Can you talk just a little bit more about um, how that how that worked? Or just yeah.
Yeah. So, circle, I have to applaud our administration team for coming up with this ideal of restorative practices. It really came up because um, we had challenging patrons, particularly teens, who were very, very disruptive. And after a while, banning banning them for a few weeks, for a few months, just wasn't addressing the issue. So again, applauding the administration team, they came up with this idea of partnering with Alliance High School, getting a trainer in, identifying Milwaukee Public employees who were interested in being the facilitator at each branch, getting them trained. So I think about 15 or so em- uh, employees went to this training, and it was an 8-hour training day. Literally got trained in how to become a circle keeper. Then they came back to the respective branches and put on a circle keeping um, circle.
Mm-hmm.
um, and and again, it was the first time I ever experienced this, and it was rewarding. It was actually eye opening. It honestly allowed for honest dialogue, and I guess it's dependent on the types of questions your facilitator asks. But he started off with an icebreaker. It was something fun like, "What is your superpower?" But it progressively went to a little bit more challenging questions. And again, it just promoted dialogue. I'm not the best authoritative person on the circle keeping, but if they have additional questions, they can email me and I will get the answers to them.
Wonderful, wonderful. And just to clarify, so that you had all staff like all the staff at your branch participated in a circle,
Yes.
and then you're working on implementing it now um, with the teens and other people,
Yep.
with the public. Okay.
Yep. So we had our first, I don't have the dates in front of me. Let me go back to that slide. Uh-oh, it's not moving. There we go. So we had our first all staff in our branch in October, just with the staff only. And then that facilitator made announcements and invited the youth in our branch to participate in the circle keeping at Center Street. And that turned out to be really successful. They had about 12 or so teens participate. And they were open. They were open to it. Now, the administration team has decided, let's expand this a little bit more and come up with a series each month and have an all staff circle keeping. And the very first one will be at the end of this month. And guess what? Administration said for the very first one, we won't be present. We want you to have an honest dialogue without having administrators present in the very first one. So I'm excited. That's going to happen at the end of the month, and I can't wait to participate.
That's great. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for all of this information, Tammy. This was a great session. As mentioned, this session recording and slides will also be posted on the conference website by tomorrow. And our next session in this track is with Kelsey Johnson-Kaiser and begins at 10:30. We hope to see you there. And if not, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thanks, everyone. Thank you so much, Tammy. That was great.
Thank you, Leah. Have a great day.
You too.